May the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O divine Redeemer. Have you ever thought about something about which, if other people could read your mind, you would have felt extremely embarrassed? Have you ever done something you regretted infinitely, but you cannot undo it? Have you ever gone somewhere you wished you had never been there, but there's no way to turn back the clock? I don't know about you, but there are plenty of times I entertained thoughts that I was later personally embarrassed to have thought about. There are times I did stuff that I regretted infinitely. There are times I've been to places where I wished I had never gone. These are times I acted to please my friends. These are times you might have unfortunately acted to belong to a group. In other words, we were incapable to discern why we thought those thoughts, why we took those actions, and why we went to those places. At the beginning of the year, we often make all sorts of New Year's resolution. We promise to be more disciplined with our diet. We promise to work out for our health. We promise to drink more water. Fortunately, for some of us, some of those promises will be renewed at least for 3/4 of the year. Unfortunately for others, most of these things will fall on the wayside within the first quarter of the year. We'll find it to be a law that when we want to do what is good, evil lies right close by at hand. We sincerely want to do the right thing at all times. But we experience in our lives forces that are at war with the force of our mind, making us captive to the force of evil that surrounds us. Is that all there is to life? How may we confidently dare to be different when we face questionable situations? What we consider in the Christian traditions to be the Holy Scriptures provide some answers. This collection of books has been selected for us for over 2,000 years. Although its central message speaks of the love of God for the entire humanity, groups of people use some of its content to oppress other groups of people. Groups of people continue to interpret it in ways that keep others in bondage. But fortunately, we all can now read it for ourselves and claim for us also the message of God's love for humanity. As we rigorously question some of its oppressive interpretations, we can own its liberating wisdom to make sense of our dilemma today. Essentially, this act of ownership of the Bible is the reclaiming of its scriptures as our own stories. Let us reclaim some of its wisdom to deal with our dilemma. In Romans 12, verse 2, listen to what the biblical text says. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you may discern what's the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. My friends, as we reflect together on these words of scriptures, I suggest that whether we are alone or in company of others, let us strive to intentionally transform our thinking, our behaviors, and our actions through the constant renewal of our mind. The divine creator built us with one of the most wonderful organs, more powerful than any machine ever created. Our mind is the seat of our mental faculties, the part of us that thinks, that reasons, and feels. Everyone possesses a mind. Some work better than others though. But all who don't have a mental impairment can take full advantage of their mind. How do we do that then? We are instructed not to be conformed to the evil that's going on around us. To be conformed to is to be or to become similar in form, nature, or in character. We often fall pressured under the cultural influences of our environment. Children and young people experience peer pressure from others. In school, others make fun of them because of their no brand name clothes and sometimes their quiet manners. To escape the torment of that peer pressure, they either go above and beyond to feed the crowd or they become sick with low self-esteem. There are women who feel pressured to craft disparaging stories to tell about men when in company of their girlfriends. Often, they are embarrassed to be one of the few who can still testify that they live in a normal marriage. And they call it girl talk. Some men feel pressured to talk trash about women when with their guy friends. To defend their manhood, they feel that they must lie about exploits that they only can imagine in their feeble minds. And they call it locker room talk. Sometimes, because of both inevitable small or big conflicts that happen in marriage, spouses silently wish inside of their mind that the marriage license had a 5-year term so that they could decide not to renew or to renew after the 5 years. As Christians, some of us condemn and pass judgment on others. We hold legalistic and rigid points of views on most doctrines. We proudly claim that our walk with God or our way of doing church is better than everyone else. And we call this the old-time religion. As preachers, some of us feel pressured to pretend that our spiritual life is always strong. We feel an obligation to make it seem that we are blessed by the best and that everything is all right with us. But deep down inside, we are suffering, we are exhausted, we feel dried out, we desperately need some encouragement and some rest. There are times we silently wish that bad things could happen to those who did us wrong. A supervisor who wrote us up unfairly. Someone who did us an injustice. In our minds, we wish that God could make some bad things happen to them. We end up confusing punishment for confusion. Then we remember that scriptures recommend to love our enemies, to pray for those who persecute us. That's when we realize how short we fall from the prescription found in the Holy Scriptures. But my friends, all is not lost. There is a way out. For we can be transformed by renewing our mind. To be transformed is to undergo a change in form, appearance, or in character. To become transformed is to make an effort to refuse to take an advantage that puts someone else at a disadvantage. When we become transformed, we pay attention to the still voice inside of us that always warns us from the evil that we are tempted to do. Transformed children seek to please God and to obey their parents. No one can ever love you as the parents you've been gifted with. It would be nearly impossible to be raised well without responsible parents who looked after you. Transformed teenagers learn to depend on God through prayers and confidently accept to live within their means. Transformed parents realize that their children need their full attention and time. They remember that they were also children, but times have really changed. They pray for wisdom and read books to improve on how to raise children who will grow into responsible adults. Transformed husband and wives strive to act kindly towards one another. It is often said that a family that prays together stays together. But inevitably, hard times will come their way. But through prayers and mutual kindness, they strengthen the vows of fidelity that they exchanged for life and the bond of matrimony. In the midst of the storm of life, they may lean on each other as they both lean on God. Transformed workers perform their duties diligently on the job, whether their boss is present or absent. They operate from a liberated mindset. They don't need any pressure to comply with their responsibility, for they work as unto the Lord. Transformed ministers exercise their ministries with humility, remembering that they are servants of God. They were called to serve the real needs of real people. They acknowledge that they also experience the common challenges that all common people face and need to take rest and ask for help. After all, the work of serving God's people is God's work and not anyone's personal business. My friends, while we strive to become transformed, the task will not be always easy. Misguided people will rise against us. Remember, there was a Judas and a Peter among the 12 disciples, remember? Life may become a bit challenging in the short terms. but it will all pay off in the long term. We will have to pray, to meditate, and work for the rest of our lives to undo the bad habits we spent the first part of our lives building. From conformity to transformation, the road may be long and difficult, but ultimately, we will come out of the other side as regenerated people. From conformity to transformation, we may have to lose some advantages. We may have to lose some friends and acquaintances. But in the long run, we will live with a renewed mind, body, and soul. Let's not be conformed to our environments. Let's be transformed by the aspiration of new possibilities. Let's not be conformed to the cool crowd, but let's be transformed by the daily improvement of our total being. That's how we will know what is the will of God for our lives, what is good and acceptable and perfect. May it be so for you and me, and may God be with you.